Hey everyone, it's Christopher Swan, and welcome to this week's episode of Living Your Journey. Each week, I have this amazing opportunity to chat with people that love what they do in life. They understand their passions and their direction. Maybe it's a career path, or it's the social impact that they're making. It's kind of like they're following their North Star. They also know their story may change, but they understand that they're on a journey every day. This week, we get an insight into the world of health, wellness, and balance with Dr. Phil Ricchiazzi. Dr. Phil is a chiropractor with a practice that uses a whole person approach to health. This means it's not just about masking or fixing the immediate problem. Instead, Dr. Phil works with patients to create a better lifestyle to, yes, correct their issues, and also help them live a more balanced and intentional life. In our chat, Dr. Phil shares his personal journey of how he switched from traditional medicine to focusing on the nervous system and chiropractic whole person care. He also opens up about challenges on the journey, advice, and why balance in life is so important. So as we get close to the end of the year and reflect on what's next, my conversation with Dr. Phil is perfect to spark some ideas. Everyone, meet Dr. Phil. Well, it's so great to have you here. Welcome to the show, Dr. Phil Ricchiazzi.
Well, thank you very much, Christopher. It's nice to be here.
I am so glad that we're finally doing this. Obviously, we've been friends for a long time. But we've never really sat down and chatted like this, and I've never really got to pick your brain, if you will, about just your background, your practice. So I actually I think I have a ton of questions for you.
Okay, well, let them rip.
Okay. So let me just do a tiny bit of setup. And, you've heard me say this before. We've talked a little bit about this. I think you have this really special way of mixing the world of medical wellness and nutrition that's not kind of the norm everywhere that we see. I think it's becoming more of the norm, but it's not everywhere. So let's get into what you do. So you owned HealthWorks, you founded this practice of HealthWorks, you're a chiropractor, but I would love you to describe your scope of work, kind of with that description I provided.
Right. Well, to get there, I probably need to give you just a little bit of background because you're right. I have melded kind of, I've taken a lot from the medical field because I used to be in the medical field, and I've melded that with the idea of what chiropractic is. And honestly, most people don't really understand what chiropractic is. And I would even venture to say that there are a number of chiropractors that don't understand what they're doing. So, I used to be in the medical field. I used to be a neuroimmunologist at USC before I became a chiropractor. And I really was on track. I was going to become a medical doctor from, day one. I kind of always thought I was going to be a doctor. I ended up getting my degree in psychology, and because I just was like, I don't know if it's just too much work. I just wasn't in the right headspace for it. And I think I just kind of struggled for a long time. I mean, it wasn't until my late 20s that I found myself like, you know what, if this is what I want to do, then just do it. And I went back to school, did all my prereqs for medical school. I mean, I was top of my class. But the problem is I always had this internal struggle with what I was doing. There's nothing wrong with medicine. But in the realm that I was in, back 15, 20 years ago, we had a lot of pharmaceutical companies coming in, and back then they could really kind of grease your palm here, take this medicine, or, here are the medications for today. And they would come every day. They take us out to lunch, they give us a whole bunch of samples, and then we would go on rounds because I was doing work with MS patients. So these people are sick, and these were ones that were hospitalized. And we would just start handing out these medications knowing nothing about them. And I had a real problem with that. And it kind of is the main thing that led me to, well, what else can I do? Because I've always loved the nervous system. It's been kind of one of my passions. And I was looking for other ways to kind of express that passion without following that medical model. I had always gone to a chiropractor when I was a young kid because I fell down a flight of stairs and was having these headaches that nobody else could help me with. Went to a chiropractor, and within a few weeks I started feeling better. So I always resonated with that alternative lifestyle, and I think after those experiences, I finally came to the conclusion: wow, chiropractic is really about the nervous system. It's not about cracking bones and moving things. It's about getting the full expression of the nervous system for every individual. And that's kind of how I've approached my style. I have a lot of base knowledge when it comes to the medical model, obviously. But, it really comes down to if our nervous system is functioning, and both the medical model and chiropractic would agree on this. If the nervous system is functioning, and the nervous system is your brain and your spinal cord and all the nerves that go to your body, just in case, some people are wondering what that is.
Sure.
And if it's functioning properly and the messages are getting back and forth, you get to be a healthy person. If that communication is broken for any reason, then you don't get to be a healthy person. So what chiropractic focuses on is looking at that message transfer. And it's looking at, is the message from the brain to the part of the body and back to the brain clear? It's almost like talking on the phone line. If it's staticky, you can't hear what the other person is saying. The same thing happens if there's damage along those nerves. So that's what I really am looking for. I'm looking to see if there's nerve irritation that's been caused by this disruption in communication. There's 3 causes to that. There's physical stresses, chemical stresses, and mental, emotional stresses that just accumulate over time. And if you're healthy and everything is working right, you're able to deal with those because we're born to be self-healing and we're born to be self-regulating. Mm-hmm. And what that means is if you cut yourself, you don't have to put a Band-Aid on it. It's going to heal. We're self-healing. And self-regulating just means all the processes that happen in our body happen automatically. We don't have to consciously think about them. So if there's a disruption in that communication, that's where I can help. And so it's really lifestyle that dictates these physical, chemical, mental, emotional. And that's why I approach my practice by looking at all 3 dimensions of stress. Physically, did they injure themselves? Are they sitting too much? We live in a world where we sit at computers 8+ hours a day. I've got patients that sit there for 8 hours at work and then they go home and sit down for another 5 hours at home.
Yes, Phil, I know this story.
Yes. do you resonate with that, Christopher?
I do.
Okay. So those things accumulate over time, and that's just physical. There's also chemical, what we are eating. It's the medications that we're on. I live here in Los Angeles, so, breathing in Los Angeles air. All these things accumulate over time. Mental, emotional is probably the biggest component. We are all stressed out. We are, I've got people worried about money, worried about children, worried about, relationships, work. On and on and on. Who doesn't resonate with that? So we have to address all of these, because if I truly want to try to get a person to reach their goal and to really reach their potential, their full potential, we have to address those things. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference between a limited scope chiropractor and what I do, which is more of a wellness-based, really look at lifestyle. Limited scope is more following the medical model, which is, okay, where does it hurt? Let's adjust you until the pain goes away, and then you're good. But the difference between pain and function is a wide gap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything you just said made a lot of sense. It's also for long term, and I love that it's not just the limited piece is really around pain. That's what I have seen, like in the market or in my environment. This is right. Let me fix this one problem because you fell down the stairs, or that's it. But maybe there's other things that go along with it, like you talked about stress and environment. It can lead to that stress. Anything can. I love all that. I think that's a great description. You mentioned something, and before I hit you like with some maybe big questions, I really would love to know this. You talked about like you were always interested or passionate about the nervous system. So, you don't normally hear people say that every day. It's more like, I love this actor, or I love this, whatever I'm doing, this hobby. So the nervous system, like when did that start? Like because I know that you did You mentioned earlier that you were working with MS patients, and I know that you also had done some research. I think you were working at the medical school of USC, if I have that correct.
Yeah, right. And that's where I was working on that's where I was the neuroimmunologist, and we were doing research on MS patients at the medical school. I think my passion for the nervous system, because you're right, it's not really a normal thing. It's like, yeah, I love the gastrointestinal system. I mean, it's a little out there, but I've always been kind of a geek.
Like you were a science kid, probably, right?
I was. I always liked biology. I was the one, trying to build a volcano. And honestly, it was in high school that I really started to fall in love with science. And I got into college, started as a pre-med student. Didn't really care about the nervous system at that point. I just always thought I wanted to be a doctor. First semester, I totally dropped out of the pre-med program because I just wasn't mentally ready for what it took to do that. I did really badly in my classes. I didn't have the motivation. And I was like, forget it. So I decided to go into psychology, and I got my degree in psychology. And it was in psychology, believe it or not, that reignited my passion for the nervous system, because I liked abnormal psychology. I liked all of that other stuff. But I took this one class called Brain and Behavior. And, I realized that every thought that we have, every single thing that happens to us, happens through our nervous system. It controls, like I said already, it controls every function, healing, but it also controls every perception, every thought we have. And so that really started to excite me, to the point that I started actually teaching the class. So I started teaching that brain and behavior class after college for a number of years. And that's, kind of led me away from the medical stuff. But after a while of doing that, I was like, you know what? I think I do really want to go back and try this again. I was a little bit more secure and a little bit more motivated. I went back to school, and like I said, I aced all of those classes. So it really changed my perception that when you think you can't do something, that oftentimes it may not be the right time to do that thing. And you have to maybe experience a little bit of something. And instead of like, nope, this is not for me, I can't do it. From my perspective, it was just the timing wasn't right. And once the timing was right, then everything clicked. And I was able to, continue down that journey. It didn't lead to me becoming a medical doctor, and honestly, I'm happy it didn't. But one thing that I've always tried to do is stay open to, trying something and see if it works out. I mean, the joke in my family is like, Phil has tried everything. At one time I wanted to be a chef. At one time I wanted to be an interior designer. At one time I wanted to be a landscape architect. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And I think it was just because awesome. I was searching for that passion, right? So I've taken all of that, because now as a chiropractor and wellness-based, do you think my psychology degree comes in handy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it sure does. And so does everything else. So no education is ever wasted, and it's really led me to, where I am now.
I keep thinking of the word awareness. It's or exposure, maybe both of those. You had to be exposed to something. It wasn't just timing. It was also about, you needed to, like that one class that really sparked your interest or sparked your imagination.
Right.
So absolutely, I can see how, you may not be on this path that is the typical, or it's not linear. You may have to jump over on this side, figure out something over here, come back. So, but the one thing I did think about, though, you did say like, oh, of course, all these, no education is wasted. And we earlier were just talking about your food presentation, because you do cook really well, obviously, and you make some really wonderful dishes. And online, it's like this presentation of like, it's like full on like food Pinterest porn sort of thing. And so my thought was like, so how does that work with your wellness now? How does that education bring back?
Well, this is what I say to people about food, because honestly, I don't eat like that 90% of the time. Sure. I would say what I mostly eat is a very, very clean diet. Everything is pretty much made. I try to be as organic as I can. And depending on what people's certain challenges are, I'm going to make certain recommendations. But this is what I always say. It doesn't matter what you do on your birthday. It only matters what you do on everybody else's birthday. So, and meaning that, yeah, it's Christmas. It's, Thanksgiving. It's my birthday. I'm going to make and eat whatever the hell I want to. And I'm going to enjoy it. But on all those other days, I'm going to do and eat the things that are going to support my health. So it doesn't have that impact. And I like to share it. I mean, we were talking about how I'm a very aesthetic type of person. So that's important to me to, make the food look presentable because that makes people want to eat it.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, yes, it happens on Facebook when I see it. So let me back up and ask the question about, I think this especially fits in well. I'm going to ask the question about the why. Like why this medical world? Why this health and wellness? Why are these things? Because, you did talk about like at one time you want to be a chef or a landscape architect and all these different things, which I could see this. Knowing you, personally, I can see these interests for you. But what is it that motivates you about, working to help support people in this way?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, the why of what led me there, I would say it was almost like an innate drive that I always had an interest in just biology and the body. And, there's that stock answer is like, I want to help people. And honestly, of course, I want to help people. And it's not about helping them get out of pain. It's helping them, regain or maintain or achieve a goal. And, that's, I think the why of when I went into it is a lot different than the why of why I'm in it now.
I love that you just said that. I think it really evolves. That's so smart.
Yeah, it definitely evolves. And I feel that I am a better person because of the work that I do. And I learn a lot from just doing the chiropractic work that I do because, people, like I said, they don't come in for pain. There's always a driving force that brings them to the chiropractor because honestly, if their bottom line was to get out of pain, there's a lot of medication out there that can do just that. So people come into me because they're looking for a way either, I don't want to cover up the symptoms. I want to actually deal with the underlying cause. And that's a concept. So, that's what my focus is in. And when I see people tell me, wow, I'm able to garden again, that's something I haven't been able to do. I'm, able to golf again, and that's why I came in here because I wasn't golfing because of the pain. That's the why of why I do what I do, because that just fills me with so much joy to know I was able to help that person on that journey to reach that potential when otherwise they just kind of were, abandoned by the medical model, because the medical model is not about, I'm going to get you golfing again. The medical model in that respect is like, okay, you've got low back pain, take this muscle relaxant or this painkiller. And, that's fine in the short term. But unfortunately, the problems just keep getting worse and worse because we never dealt with what caused it. And I've always been an inquisitive person, and a nosy person. So when somebody comes in, I want to know everything about them. And I was like, I really want to get to the nuts and bolts of like, why is this going on with you? Because if you're, honestly, if you're healthy, there's no need for symptoms. You shouldn't be having those problems.
With everything you just said and about, Western medicine and the way that you combine just getting, to the real core of the answer, like what the problem really is. You're so inquisitive, like you said. What about mindfulness? So I ask you this, and because I really would just love to know your opinion about this. Mindfulness has been such a big thing in marketing, online, and all this stuff in the last couple years. And so I'm really curious, does that play any role in the way that you work with a patient or the way that you kind of connect with them for health and wellness?
It's a very intuitive question, and 100%. And I would also say that it's transformed my practice when I became more mindful and when I got my patients to be more mindful, not only of the adjustment and while they're in my office, but when it comes to recreating the stresses over time. For example, when I'm in my office with every single patient, when I lay them down on the table, we don't chat about the weather. We don't chat about the election. We don't chat about, what they're going to have for dinner that night. They're there for a reason to get their nervous system functioning better than it was the day before. So I tell every single patient, I need you to quiet down. I want you to focus on something pleasant, because if you put your body into a defensive physiology, what benefit do you think you're going to get from this adjustment? So I want you to think of something happy, something pleasant, and people will say, okay, I'm going to think of the beach. I'm going to think of this. So the funniest one I've ever had is like, okay, I'm going to think of an egg burrito. I'm like, okay, you think of that egg burrito. If that gets you there, then that's great. And then what I do is I then quiet down and I think about my egg burrito, and I really focus in on, what am I getting from their body? Because there is an art to chiropractic. Not all, you can teach a chimpanzee to come up and, because I don't do the manual manipulation, I actually use an instrument to do the adjustment. And you can train a chimp to do that. But it's to know when to adjust and when not to adjust, and the nuances, and really listening and honing in on their body, which is the art of it. And that takes concentration. So mindfulness is critical. And then when we go outside the office, they need to be aware of the physical, chemical, mental, emotional stresses that got them there. If they keep banging their head against the wall all day long and they don't change anything, they're not going to get much success in my office. So they have to be clear, and they have to have intention with everything that they do from that point on. And those are the type of patients I attract to my office, and those are honestly the ones that have the greatest success.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I would think that this also blends right into balance as well. When intention comes, you're being intentional, not just about this health and wellness of in the moment. Like you said, you step out of the office, and so I think it's a perfect segue into how do we use balance to be mindful in that? And I bring that up especially because I also know that you have this great background of participating in the AIDS life cycle for many years now, and I can see that as a part of your balance. So maybe you give me a little bit of info on how does balance fit into that health and wellness, and what does that look like for you? Like, how do you preach and live that?
Okay. So that's a good question. I would say, yes, AIDS life cycle is one dynamic, because I'm all about, setting a goal and achieving that. The cooking is another one that's, totally opposite of that. And then there's, the passion that I have with the work that I do. But if I put all my focus into just to my work, like I used to do, burnout is huge. And that's where I was getting to the point of where I was really starting to burn out. And I had to do a lot of soul searching to see how can I help the people I need to help, but also support myself and have balance. So I talk to my patients every day about when it comes to, this go, 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 go mentality. I said, what's your end game and what is your goal here? Well, I want to have this, 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 and this. I'm like, okay. So let me just tell you from my experience, if we don't balance and find ways and outlets to support ourselves mentally, physically, nutritionally, you're unlikely to reach those places. Now, I've always been a cyclist, and I used to do, different centuries around California. So the next big challenge was this ride, the ALC, and that goes from San Francisco to Los Angeles. And as a gay man, I really wanted to do something more than just write a check. And it was also a way to challenge me to do something I've never done. I mean, it's 545 miles.
Yeah, I was just going to say, pause there for a second. For the folks that don't know yet, it's a ride that's kind of famous, especially on the West Coast, where so many people know about it, that people ride literally on their bikes from San Francisco to Los Angeles over a matter of days. So sorry to pause you there. I just, for the folks that didn't know. No, good. Thank you. And it's 7 days, 545 miles, and it's to raise awareness and funding for the Gay and Lesbian Center here in Los Angeles and up in San Francisco. And so, it's a great cause. I do it because of the passion that I have for that, and also because
a very difficult thing. And honestly, I don't like to exercise. And one of my,
I didn't know that. That's hilarious.
I don't like to do it. So, but to be healthy, I have to do it.
Yeah.
So, and this is what I talk to patients about all the time. I'm like, I get it. You don't like it? I don't like it either. It's really boring to go walk on a treadmill for an hour. So, I've figured out a way to find something that I like to do, which is I like to ride my bike. And I've set a goal, and I have money on the line for it because people are donating to this. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't have to be ALC, but I tell people all the time, why don't you sign up for something? Sign up for a 5K walk. Sign up for, whatever it is you like. Find something that you're kind of on the hook for. Because believe me, when you get closer and closer to that date, you find the motivation to find the exercise. And when that ends, find another one. And so that's how I like to, help people find that little piece if they don't like to go to the gym and they don't like to exercise. But it's really changed my life. When I really did find the balance, one thing I did is I cut my schedule in half, and I only see patients half the day. Mm. And patients are like, must be nice to, not be here in the afternoon. I said, yeah, it really is. I said, but also, don't you want somebody that is balanced and that has all of their energy to be able to focus on you when you're here, or do you want somebody that's, worn out and burned out to give you your adjustment? And I think they get a little aha, and from modeling that stuff, I think, hopefully the patients I see are able to try to get a little bit more balance.
I hope so too. I think it's become a norm, at least in, I would say, the US or the Western world, of more work is better, is what this norm has become, where it doesn't really have to be that way. Just because you're busy doesn't mean like you're doing great stuff. I love the emphasis of finding the intention, and it's like living a full life. That's what this is really about.
Well, we only have this one life. So, I tell my husband all the time, because my husband is like a Midwest, like, workhorse. And I don't come from that background. I'm Italian. I mean, we take 2-hour breaks in Italy. They know how to live. And so, yeah, you have to have that, because at the end of the day, when you look back on your life, you're not going to look back and go, God, I got that report out on time. You're going to look at all the things that you experienced. Those are the things that you're going to remember. Oh, I took this trip. I did this. My husband or my wife, we had children, whatever it is, those are the things you're going to reflect on. And if you're just bury your head in the sand and are go, 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 I mean, I think unfortunately a lot of people are missing out on that. And I try to wake people up, and it's not easy. It really isn't, because it is ingrained in us.
Yeah, it is. And by the way, I'm going to quote you on that about the report on time. Look, I can look back. So, okay. Here's the thing that I usually like to uncover a little bit, just because I think we're also really good about sharing, especially where we're at today, when we're in a really good place and we're in a happy place and we've succeeded through, the things that we were looking to do. But during the middle, and I think you kind of hinted toward this, it was that, like, if you work too much, you get burnt out. Like, you had this kind of moment where you're like, no, I'm not doing that. So My question really is around, I like to cut through all the shiny. Like, were there some struggles there though? Like, because I think it's important for the rest of us when we hear these sorts of things too, to know, like, it wasn't all rainbows and unicorns the entire time. Like, it was a lessons you had to learn. And so I'm wondering if there's anything you could share there that said, yeah, like, maybe I didn't have all the answer in the middle, or there was a real struggle for me here, and this is why.
Yeah. And absolutely, it isn't all rainbows and it isn't all unicorns, and that's nice. But it was a struggle. I mean, it was a struggle on many levels in my life, I would say. I mean, one struggle is, coming out. I mean, as a gay man, we all have a come out story. We all have to do it, and we do it every day. Yeah. So that was a huge struggle. I didn't do it until later in life. I mean, I was 31 years old, and nowadays, kids are coming out in high school and elementary school, and it just was a different world when I did it. So, there was all of that stuff that I had to deal with, and just my own self-esteem and just coming to terms with who I was. And so that layered on top of I'm starting a business on my own, right out of school. I didn't go and help any other doctor. I literally just hung my shingle on the door, and I sat there and just wondered where the people were. And I started with what I thought was a wellness model, and after a couple of years realized I wasn't doing that. I was doing a very pain-based model, and I also started with not taking any insurance. I mean, from day one, I never took any insurance because in my head, a wellness model, insurance don't make any sense. When you're getting paid by an insurance company, you always work for the person that pays you. So if the insurance company is paying me, I work for them. They tell me how many treatments I'm going to see you, regardless what that person's health or needs are. So I knew early on I didn't want to do that. But I started my practice 2006, and guess what happened right at that time? And the recession. So it was difficult, with all of the problems that we were having then, and starting this practice from scratch with no insurance. So there were a lot of struggles. I mean, it wasn't all, candy canes. But I luckily had the support of my husband and my family, and, slowly I was able to build and build. And once I got much clearer on really what my purpose was for the practice, because remember I said I was pain-based, but when I really got the purpose and really what I knew I was doing, then things really changed.
Okay. So then you were talking about too, even just like the coming out and, about how that really kind of, that was part of this process. How did that mold where you wanted to go? I mean, did that also help you? Like, I just think about, these struggles that we were talking about is you had this struggle with the recession and then was coming out part of that process also, just like in the midst of sort of that experience, like, and did that shape anything or how your practice came to be?
Well, I honestly don't know that I would have gotten where I am if I had not come out. I came out before I went back to school. And, I was just afraid. I was afraid to come out because of, the thoughts in my head of like, well, what are my parents going to think? I had all these preconceived notions of what that meant, and am I going to be judged, and am I going to still be loved? I think a lot of people go through that. And a lot of those were in my head. I know that some of the, worst experiences actually do come out for some people. But for me, that I was lucky when I did come out. I mean, my parents were, very supportive. And I had, just met my now husband. And he kind of was the reason I came out, because before that I didn't really feel a need to, because I never really, had a relationship long enough to say, oh, okay, I'm not really gay. I kind of struggled with all that.
Sure.
So because I finally did, and I over time was able to really embrace who I was, and I'm proud of who I am, it kind of opened doors for me. I felt more motivation to actually make some changes in my life. And it's what led me to take on this big, scary, let's become a chiropractor and go back to school and do all that. So I think that coming out at that time in my life was really critical. And, I wouldn't have had it any other way.
Yeah, it makes sense. I was hoping you would say stuff like that, because I couldn't help but think that is part of being, yourself, being authentic. Because if you're not that's part of that kind of intention you talked about. Even though we were talking about mindfulness and balance, I just can't help but think, like, if you're not your true self, or you're not really like expressing who you are, how can you really go after all these really big things and put your best effort forward if you're not able to just relax and be yourself?
Yeah, I 100% agree.
So, you've been in practice for a long time now. It's been, 10, almost 11 years, I guess, if you count the part of the 2005.
Right.
So there's been this evolution for you. Obviously, you talked about your why is a little bit different today than it was, when you first started. What keeps you kind of motivated? Because, we can be in a skill set or a practice or doing something, day in, day out, and we can get a little maybe a little bored or a little like, same old, but like, what kind of keeps you kind of maybe on the new frontier or keep doing more?
You know, it's really an actually easy question to answer because it is in work, it's definitely my patients. And every day is different. I always say to my patients, listen, you don't get cookie cutter chiropractic here. Every experience with every person is different. So I'm always excited to see what's coming. But on top of that, it's the successes, and they don't have to be big. It's not about the aha, big magic moments where somebody crawls into my office, as I've had that. I mean, the very first patient in practice I ever had crawled into my office, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this person? So, you know, I've had people crawl into the office and walk out the door, and those are like, you know, I mean, it's like, wow, this is magic.
Yeah.
But it's not about those. It's about the smaller successes, the ones that really take time and energy and work on both of our parts, because I think anything worth having is worth working at. You know, for example, I had a patient that I've been seeing for years, and she was in a motorcycle accident, broke both of her legs, broke one of her arms, had a knee replacement, and you know, she's lucky to be walking. And she came in because of low back pain and leg issues, and she always had this goal that she wanted to do something great. She didn't know what that great was. As we were working on her and working on her potential, she was seeing more and more potential. And I think chiropractic doesn't only change how you physically feel, but it changes how you mentally look at everything, because remember, it focuses on the nervous system. If your nervous system is feeling better, guess what? Your mental outlook is different and you feel better too. So she decided a year and a half ago, she's like, Dr. Phil, I know this sounds crazy, but I want to row across the Atlantic or across the Pacific Ocean in a boat. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're out of your mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. But wait a minute. This comes from the man that has like done the AIDS life cycle like 4 or 5 times or something.
Yeah, but I didn't do them 5 times in a row. It's 7 days. So what she wanted to embark on was a 45-day rowboat mission from Santa Cruz to Honolulu. It was a 2-woman boat. And I said, okay. I said, this is what we need to do to get there. This is the training we need to do. I'm going to support you along the way and help you. And you know what? She came in second overall. There was 12 teams.
Wow.
The only team that beat her was a 2-man team. It was a 4-man team, and they were like in their mid-20s, 30s. She's a 55-year-old woman with her friend. The 2 of them rowed across the Atlantic, or across the Pacific Ocean. Came in second, came in first in their little group,
yeah,
and broke the world record for the oldest woman to ever cross the Pacific in a rowboat.
That's amazing.
So, you know, it's those type of things, and then it's even smaller. Like, I just want to garden. I have an 80-year-old who is like, you know, I can't get down the stairs to go to my yard, and I said, is that important for you? She's like, yeah, I mean, it's the thing that relaxes me. It's the thing that I love to do. And so that was our goal. And she was just telling me yesterday, I just saw her yesterday. She's like, okay, well, you know, I need to go do this gardening this weekend. I said, what's going on with your gardening? She's like, oh, Dr. Phil, because, you know, people forget to tell me the good things. I have to like remind them. They always want to tell me, yeah.
Well, it makes sense though.
Yeah, I know. People concentrate on that. I'm like, my little toe hurts. I'm like, okay, so you're not having 4 migraines a week anymore? Oh no, those are gone. But my toe really hurts. I'm like, okay, well, let's step back here and let's celebrate the fact that you're not having 4 migraines a week. And okay, now let's look at the little toe. So, you know, it's little successes like that. Like, I'm gardening again, I'm golfing again. That's what really keeps me passionate. To do this every day.
It makes sense too, because you're helping somebody, you know, get back to the things that they love.
Right.
Yeah, whether a garden or rowing across the Pacific. I'm probably not doing the latter. So I just something I kept thinking about too is because I think people come to you because they want help, right? They want all these different things, and not only are you giving them this health and wellness and medical, but, you know, like you said, you were really inquisitive, so you're asking a lot of questions. I can't help but think you probably are offering so many different nuggets of wisdom or advice or things that you've heard or things that you see, and not just maybe health-wise. So I started to think about maybe where did you receive some of that? Like, could you even maybe think about like, what's some of the maybe the best advice that you've received along the way that maybe you've applied to your life?
Yeah. I think the first thing that pops into my head is my parents, to be honest. I often get the question like, well, who are your mentors? Who do you look up to? Who is it that, kind of like what you just asked, what was that message? And I mean, first was my parents growing up for sure. And I was very lucky to have two parents that always said from day one, whatever you want to do in life, you can do if you put your mind to it. There was never, you need to follow in the family business, or you need to, and being Sicilian, it's not that business, but the other family business.
Not what I was thinking, but thanks for taking us there. It's a comedy show with Phil.
Yeah, but it was about make sure that you follow whatever your passion was, and honestly, they supported me through all those ups and downs of like, I'm going to be a chef, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that. I'm like, all right, whatever you want to do. So I think that that's one foremost. And then I've had some teachers along the way that really helped mentor me and gave me guidance on, what's important. I would have to say my husband for sure, because it was my husband who pushed me into like, Phil, this is really what you want to do. Just do it. And so, I had the ability to luckily take that information in and got me to where I am. So I would say those people in my life.
Mm-hmm. What's something that for maybe, what about if folks don't have those sorts of people in their life? Is there some sort of advice you'd give them if they, like, say somebody just starting out, maybe they're in the same path you were, I want to do this, want to try this, and they're still kind of in discovery. Any kind of like words of wisdom you would say to them about, discovery or belief or something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say surround yourself. If you don't have, the support group that I had, surround yourself around people that you want to be like. Mm. So if that is, whatever it is, if you want to be a chef, or you want to be, go into IT, or you want to, run a marathon, whatever it is, surround yourself around those people. Start learning what those people do. Start reading about what those people do, and start doing what those people do. And I think that's the best advice that I could give to anybody, regardless if you have the support group or not. You need to do a little bit of homework and surround yourself with like-minded people.
That's great. I love that. If I kind of think of, if people aren't lifting you up, maybe they're not the right people to be around. It's, right. Who do you want to be like? I love that. Well, Phil, this has been super terrific. I loved everything that you shared. I really like the way that you look at things. It's balance. It's funny because balance is getting kind of maybe a bad term, because in the corporate world, they talk a lot about work-life balance, but it's this, I think it's not just a phrase, it's the way that we look at life, our full life, our whole person. And I think everything you just talked about, even just to your advice, really speaks to that, about living a full life and looking at things a little differently.
Well, thank you. It's exciting to talk about this stuff. I do have a passion for it, and I feel that you really hit the nail on the head. At the end of the day, if we're not balanced in life, work, love, whatever fills us up, we need to find those things to refuel ourselves. Otherwise, we're not living our full potential. And so it's one thing I really focus on when I'm talking to friends, when I'm talking to loved ones, when I'm at work, is, let's find that balance, and how can we always strive for that?
Yeah. So great. So the last question we always like to end with is, where can people follow along online, and also where is your practice?
Well, the name of my practice is HealthWorks, and my practice is located in Hollywood, right in the middle of everything. And you can go online. You can either go to my website, which is Dr. Phil. I'm sorry, my website is HealthWorks chiro.net. And you can find me there. You can also email me, drphil@healthworkschiro.net. Or you can also Facebook me. You can just search out HealthWorks Chiropractic and Dr. Phil, and I'll come up. And, I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has. And that's where I'm at.
Perfect. And we'll list all of that in the show notes, and we'll also put it on our website, so it could be really easy to find you and connect and ask some questions.
Great.
All right. Well, Dr. Phil, I absolutely appreciate it, and this has been so much fun.
Well, thank you, Christopher. It's always great to talk to you, and this was enlightening for me too, so I enjoyed it.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for listening to the show this week. What'd you think? Great story? Any new ideas? If you're new to the show, subscribe to receive a new episode each week automatically. And if you love the show and you want to help us out, go tell a friend about it. Then go write us a quick review on iTunes. Both of these favors really help us get the word out. If you want to follow along with me and see behind the scenes fun and more, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at @MeChristopher. That's MECHRISTOPHER. To get even more inspiration and updates, follow Accidental Information on Instagram and Facebook at Accidental Information, and on Twitter at Accidental Info. We also post original articles about following your passions and getting creative, and more information about each episode at accidentalinformation.com. Thanks for joining me this week. Now let's keep chatting online, and then I will talk to you again next week.